Spoiler for Sonic Mania Plus and Sonic IDW up until issue 7, and yes, I do own physical copies of the comic, but I will use digital copies for editing's sake. So okay, Sonic Mania ends with Sonic being teleported away, presumably to Sonic Forces. Sonic Forces ends with the Phantom Ruby disappearing with Eggman, and then classic Sonic fading away. Then all of a sudden there's both Mania Plus and Mania Adventures that show Sonic returning to his world, but Mania Plus with the Phantom Ruby, which is how he disappeared in regular Mania, and Mania Adventures where he has a goodbye pose and no Phantom Ruby like how he was at the end of Forces. So Mania Adventures follows up from Sonic Forces, where Mania Plus follows up from regular Mania, so something is retconned away. Huh. And then we have classic Eggman disappearing at the end of Mania Plus, so there's gotta be another follow-up. Welcome everyone, welcome to Sonic Dissected. In this video we'll talk about the IDW Sonic comics, and Ian Flynn then, and American comics in general.
Spoilers! I've only read the first 2 issues!
Wow, that guy really is useful. Thanks for showing up and doing nothing, Captain Ignorant.
Whatever, let's just begin. Sonic IDW comics, the Sonic Archie comics have been going on.
Did somebody say Archie Sonic?
Oh, great.
Oh hey, it's my old buddy Melting Man. What are you doing in the trash? Your videos aren't that bad. Most of the time.
Sorry, it's just that I'm a huge fan of the Archie Sonic comics, and so far I've been enjoying the new IDW Sonic comics. And I'm real happy to see you guys finally talk about them.
Right. Archie has been going on for decades. Had their ups, their downs, and got under fire for taking extreme liberties with the characters and tackling topics not suitable for children. Basically anything more spicier than Sonic running around in Green Hill Zone being a punchline generator. After some severe controversies and lawsuits, they had a reboot, changed their style, and bent over backwards to try and appease the critics. Unnecessary characters and stories were thrown out, troublesome artists thrown out, and we got a more clear and focused game adaptation out of it. And the people unhappy with Archie's darker days were grateful and happily responded to Archie's improvements by ignoring it and still complaining endlessly about the pre-reboot series, so much so that when Archie finally killed off their Sonic series, all I read in the comments were people still calling it dumpster fires and how terrible it was pre-reboot, never acknowledging the series had changed to their liking before its final years. Really reminds me of the Sonic games, where no matter how many lighthearted, dumb 2D Sonic-only games we had in the past decade, everyone still pretends the series is still stuck in 2006. So despite me not having followed the Archie comic series that much, reading the less than gracious epitaphs of the comic annoyed the hell out of me.
I feel like most of the negative reception on the old continuity comes from the Sonic game purists, whether they be classic or modern gamers. They just disregard it as non-canon because it's nothing like the games.
Canon.
Well, no duh. This is a completely different universe. That's the point. I don't see anyone complain about the other versions of Sonic we got in the cartoons. Even the post-reboot years got its fair share of flack, even though this was mostly from fans of the old continuity, ranting about minor things like character redesigns to other elements like certain characters being banned because of legal issues, or that they were starting to become too much like the games. Although they never officially stated why Archie Sonic was cancelled, I still believe that Sega was getting tired of Archie getting lawsuit claims from former writers. First the Ken Penders lawsuit regarding character ownership, then the Scott Fulop lawsuit regarding graphic novel reprints, and then Sega decided enough was enough, and killed off Archie Sonic.
I suppose just entirely killing it off and starting anew was the only way to get rid of the negative reputation. Just goes to show that actually improving your work, your writing and following up on feedback is meaningless, and people will still accuse you of the same things you've grown past since, and only completely burning down your legacy and having a complete new start is the way out. Guess that's what the Sonic games need to do. Complete reboot and fresh start.
Already did that in Rise of Lyric.
Yeah, because the damn advertising was a straight up lie. We're gonna reintroduce these characters in this new world, in this new series. Yeah, well, they gave us the middle and the ending to that project, but completely forgot to give us the beginning.
If there ever was a beginning. Anyway, Ian Flynn. Can I call him Sega's janitor? I think I'll call him Sega's janitor. Janitor Flynn, the Sega staff forget to write a beginning to Sonic Forces. Can you make some prologue comics? Janitor Flynn. Half of Sonic Forces characters dropped out of the game with no closure, and we forgot to address most relevant events. Can you write an epilogue comic? Don't think I mean janitor in a disrespectful way. Heck, try living in a filthy, dirty, broken down house for weeks, and a janitor stepping in to fix the plumbage and get things straightened out would be an actual grand hero. Janitor Flynn, Sega staff broke the characters again. Can you fix them up? Whoa, hey look! Tails is heroic and desperate to show off his abilities, yet still cute and respectful. Oh, hey look! Knuckles has a playful rivalry going on with Sonic again. He feels uncomfortable working with others, but does it out of pride and a sense of duty. He's hot-headed and simple-minded, but not outright stupid. Holy shit, it's my boys again, welcome back! You fixed them, Mr. Flynn! It's a miracle! Now let's enjoy these characters before Team Sonic Racing comes out. Uh-oh, here come the official Sega writers again. Janitor Flynn, they broke the characters again. Clean up on aisle 7.
I see what you mean. Flynn seems like the kind of guy that helps out in picking up the pieces or give us some elements to better clarify certain aspects that were ignored in the games. A good example of this is issue 3 of IDW Sonic, where they explain why the Wisps are involved during the events of Sonic Forces, unlike in the game where they were just tacked on power-ups, because Izuka just loves his Wisps.
Well, at least with his Wisp, Green Hill, and Pontiff obsession, we finally get some consistency in the games. But yeah, man, as much as I hate Sega's brainless reusing elements from the past all the time, at least Ein Flynn does something with them. Sonic Heroes free charging, floating island to get a Master Emerald. Yes! Why did none of this stuff happen in Sonic Forces? That's proper use of the past instead of just, remember Chaos, remember Green Hill Zone? Nice to see everyone act appropriately again, and the parts and pieces of the Sonic universe actually being utilized rather than just being dangled in front of us like shiny objects. Although, to be fair, even Ein Flynn can be guilty of that, like the random use of the Echidna tribe in a prequel comic.
A damn shame he isn't the official Sega localizer, rather than the Pontiff duo. Sure, localizers can fix the horrible mess of these stories, but at least the characters will talk appropriately again. But yeah, so Mr. Flynn seems like he's a good writer then.
He has a very good grasp on the characters, the history, the lore, but in terms of actual plot, I tend to find his stories kind of flat, like I'm missing something. Although I haven't read all of his stories yet, so maybe I can still be surprised, but so far... But before I get specifically into Ein Flynn or the comics, I have to address European versus American comics, because my opinion and experience with these books is really going to depend on this. Traditional USA and European comics. So from the American side, that is specifically these superhero style issues. I'm ignoring newspaper strips or graphic novels and webcomics and such. That makes things too muddy. Not everything made by an American, just the types of comics really deep in that American comic book culture, not the indie stuff or other comics that exist in a different culture. There seems to be a big difference between traditional American style comics and European comics that I grew up with. You'd think it wouldn't matter all that much, it's all cartoon characters talking with speech balloons, but there are several cultural differences.
Yeah, like covers. European comics do weird things, like have the covers drawn by the same artists that do the entire comic, often even depicting a scene that actually happens in the story itself. Madness, I tell you. Unlike American comics that love having other artists just do the cover and one that has nothing to do with the story. If you're so lucky to just have one cover, and not 3 or 4 ones, or none at all, where you can hire your own artist to draw a cover for you.
Especially when it comes to variation covers. Sure, it's nice to see different artists on their own take on the cover of the issue, whether it's related to the story or not, but it just comes off as some cheap marketing tactic by comic book companies to get more money. Besides, why bother wasting your money on 4 copies of the same issue when you can just stick with the one you got and just look up the different covers on Google Images?
Yeah, European heroes and series are usually closely connected to their creators, so most heroes stay within the same team for its entire life. Sure, a writer might be replaced, but there's generally only one artist, one father to the project. Although it has happened with popular series for a follow-up artist to be hired if the original one is too old to carry on or has died. Lucky Luke or Asterix, for example, have new artists now, but they stay very close to the vision of the original, where American heroes are owned by the publisher and therefore have a more chaotic structure with several writers and artists dropping in and out on a monthly basis. So it's harder for American series to uphold their own style.
Which can lead to backstabbing. Always fascinating to read American comics where the writers are fighting internally, them trying to screw each other on a monthly basis, killing off each other's characters or plot lines. Duel of the Writers.
Right. Another difference I noticed with American culture and European culture is art style. The art style, the granddaddy of American comics is Superman. That's the golden standard, so all your typical comic heroes are realistic looking, straightly drawn. In Europe, Asterix and Tintin are the golden standards, and they are much more distorted and cartoonish. As a result, distorted and stylistic art styles have a different reputation. Like in America, any kind of style is usually immediately dismissed to be for children, well, unless it's deliberately very horror-esque style, I guess. Well, in Europe, it's much more neutral towards distortion, so there's plenty of comics with Tintin-esque cartoon styles and anthropomorphic heroes and such, where violence, cursing, and sex freely happens without any cultural pressure that this should immediately be child-friendly.
Yeah, you have to look for more subtle clues to know for what age it's meant for. People might actually have to look at the actual rating. The indignity.
But now the bigger thing between USA-style issues and European comics is the pace, the story structure. Here, there's usually about one story a year, but it's a complete full story with start, middle, and end. In America, it's mostly and usually tiny part of a smaller saga every month, resulting that our comics are more carefully scripted and have a more movie-like TV show-esque flow to them, where American comics constantly seem to be panicking and desperately throwing things at you. This guy might die, this guy might die, oh shit, this guy is the bad guy, buy the next issue, ah!
Yeah, but to be fair, it makes American comics way more exciting. It's constantly trying to please you, having thrilling reveals and shocks. There's always something happening, while European comics take forever to get to their mildly interesting conclusions.
True, it makes American comics way more epic. But one thing I notice, I'm not sure, but this is how it always kind of feels to me, information distribution. Like in European comics, dialogue and exposition is used to build toward a twist, towards the conclusion, where USA comics prefer to pound you in the face with the shocking event first, and then use dialogue and exposition after the fact to explain their twists in reverse. Results that European comics progress more naturally but are usually more tame, while American comics are more wild and intense, but writers tend to trap themselves in corners so often that they constantly have to rely on time travel, alternative dimensions, clones, and other excuses to entangle the mess they created by their constant desperate twists. Not to mention the dialogue itself feels more forced because, it's kind of like a roller coaster. If you go up and then there's a drop, there's the anticipation, so the climb is fun. Well, if you already had to drop and then you climb, then the climb is just boring because the roller coaster is already over. As another result, it feels European comics get their emotions more from story flow, how characters get there and why, while American comics tend to get emotions just from that the thing happened, with the why and how being more of an afterthought or more like a very dry discussion. In stories with tons of characters, I feel like I'm constantly pinballing and teleporting from character to character who just randomly appear everywhere, who will then have a dry and boring conversation about why they're there afterwards. As a result, whenever I talk to comic book fans, they come across to me as being obsessed in facts. So whenever they show me a cool panel from the comic and want my reaction to it, and I ask for context so I know how to look at the panel, they can't explain it in terms of story flow, not in what's happening and why. Instead, they describe the panel in summing up all the individual facts of each component. Well, this character's name is Fang, but sometimes also called the Knack, and in issue 39 he captured Sonic, but then joined the Devil's Gulag in issue 68, but then the Destructors, and then the Super Genesis wave, so then he teamed up with Team Hooligan. I got this giant heap of individual facts, most of them completely irrelevant to the panel that I'm looking at, instead of just the relevant context I need. I tend to think that American comic book fans process information more by endless facts and individual events, rather than story context and flow, and that always drives me insane when I'm talking to fans of the comic.
Well, with Archie Sonic, you can get your hands on the complete Sonic comic encyclopedia. That book tells you everything you need to know about Archie Comics' version of Sonic. Well, the old continuity version. They never got around to making one on the new continuity.
See, that's exactly my point. Immediately, well, here's an entire 200-page encyclopedia for you to memorize, responds. Exactly. It is more like discussing an encyclopedia rather than an adventure sometimes. Although, to be fair, man, I wish the Sonic game universe had an encyclopedia. If only so it could laugh at the poor bastard has to make sense of that mess.
Well, there are certain issues that provide a brief summary on the previous story at the start of the new issue, but I understand. Even that's not enough to give us the full picture on the current situation. It's annoying when you've just started reading a comic book series, and the first issue you pick up is the middle section of a 5-part story. It's not that easy trying to start a comic series and then read it through in chronological order, especially when there are spin-off comics that are indeed canon to the main comic. Heck, even I was confused at first on what was going on when I first started reading Archie Sonic with the Tossed in Space story arc. Took me a while to read through the other issues to get a better understanding on who these characters are and what this universe is like.
Well, enough already. We've been talking for what feels like hours and barely said anything about the IDW comics at all. So let's begin. Archie Sonic Comics is dead, and from its ashes a new series rises. Sonic the Hedgehog. Just Sonic the Hedgehog. Would be nice if they gave it a unique name, like Sonic Boom, Sonic Underground, but a new one, like Sonic Rebirth. But let's keep things confusing, why not? Ian Flynn said that IDW was to start with a clean slate. This is their own take on the Sonic series. Why immediately weigh it down with decades of confusing history by tying it to the Archie series or anything else? No sir, this is a brand new standalone series, and what better way to start with a clean slate than to make it a Sonic Forces sequel? Sonic Forces of all games. Not like Lost World or Colors that were standalone adventures. No, it's random throwing everything and the kitchen sink from the past games on a pile Sonic Forces. There goes the clean slate.
Yeah, I wonder how the new audiences IDW wanted to attract to react to Sonic and Shadow having huge discussions about previous games or the history lesson about Metal Sonic. A brand new series and already dragging in several decade-old plots like it's a long-running series. But hey, at least game fans are happy Ian Flynn uses the past properly to build and tie everything together, instead of Sega that just breaks Sonic's universe further apart every time the past is shoved in, broken, and out of context. Speaking of which, did the games ever explain what happens to Metal Sonic that Team Dark captured at the end of Heroes? I don't recall. Everyone just jumped straight to Metal being back in Eggman's possession. But yeah, hardly a fresh start.
Maybe they heard about all the complaints on how there's too much classic Sonic, so they decided not to start at the very beginning. Although with that whole retcon being established, I honestly have no idea what game is supposed to be the proper beginning for modern Sonic these days. Ugh.
Fresh start doesn't have to mean origin story. Sonic Adventure felt like a fresh start, and that wasn't an origin story. It just bothered to put the characters back in their starting positions instead of immediately kicking them off into the middle of the next adventure. Something that not even one goddamn reboot even attempted to do. And don't get me started on what modern Sonic is and where it starts and what's canon. It gives me a headache. I read the Sonic Wiki to see what their explanation is, and it's kinda interesting how they wrote it down. I expected them to write Sonic 1, 2, and 3 and such are classic Sonic, and everything from Sonic Adventure on is modern Sonic. But instead, they write it like the entire series is always modern Sonic, but now there just happens to be a side dimension that's specifically classic Sonic that shares Sonic 1, 2, 3 with modern Sonic, and only has Sonic Mania and, for some reason, Sega Sonic Arcade being uniquely classic Sonic. But that several games, including Sonic CD, aren't part of classic Sonic, so classic Amy might not exist in the classic era. Except she did have a robot in Mania, and Bean and Bark showed up, and they're not supposed to be canon. Look, I have no idea where this information comes from, or if there's any point in trying to understand this shit, since I doubt even one person at Sega thought this through or gives a fuck. Still, I find Classic Sonic's position fascinating. I love how they made a rule that Classic Sonic should be completely detached from modern Sonic and can't even be a younger version, yet then they still import 99% of Classic Sonic's history into the modern games, so much that classic levels as Green Hill, Death Egg, and Chemical Plant Zone have more of a presence than even one modern Sonic location. Everyone refers to these giant robots as Death Egg robots, even though only Classic Sonic should be having that association, as these robots are never utilized on a Death Egg from modern Sonic's perspective. And yet, when it comes to Bark and Bean and Fang, then all of a sudden Sega draws a line in the sand and goes, no, Classic Sonic can't be a modern Sonic. Yeah, so 99% of Classic Sonic already exists and infested modern Sonic. So it's absolutely adorable that you're finally taking a stand and making sure that the last 1% of Classic Sonic stays in its place. Yeah, good job of holding your position. It's like protecting a natural reserve and telling people to leave it alone and then still ignore the fact that Chemical Plant is installed on 99% of the property, but my god will you install armed guards and cannons to protect that last patch of grass. But yeah, anyway, so back to IDW Comics. Of course, a sequel.
So Janitor Flynn to the rescue to address where Blaze is, why Eggman didn't attack Floating Island, etc.
Even for a brand new series, there's still plenty of holes that need to be patched up to get the full picture on this universe. IDW did say that they can use anything from the games, but they weren't being specific on what games they're allowed to adapt. Archie Sonic had a huge library of game elements that they featured in their pages, whether it was an adaptation of Tails' Adventure or featuring elements from the 8-bit version of Sonic 2. They usually had a purpose, Whether it was important to the story, a new take on an already told story, or just a cheap way of advertising the new game that ends up being not canon to the comic universe. While we don't know how IDW and Sega will be handling this so far, I feel like there will be some strict rules on what they can and cannot show in the comics, much like how Archie Sonic's new continuity had to deal with some strict, yet questionable, rules. Their recap on Sonic Forces is very brief. Aside from a mentioning of the Avatar character, it's just Robotnik took over, Sonic joined the Resistance to fight back, and won! And that's about it. They never bring up Infinite or the whole deal of classic Sonic now coming from a different universe instead of the past. And after thinking about it for a while, I honestly wouldn't mind if they included the retcon. At least in this universe, it would be established from the beginning, unlike in the games where for 20 years they were like, yep, those two are the same person, and then 5 years later they're like, oh, did we say that? Nah, we meant they're two completely different characters who exist in two completely different universes. Yeah, that's how it's always been from the beginning. Ugh, I'm sorry, I'm never letting that go.
I heard rumors they're reversing the decision again, lucky you. Also, even if the comics has a more natural place to retcon some game elements, it still constantly require you to get context out of the actual games. It's constantly referring to game events. So it has the same problem as Sonic Boom, where it wants to be its own unique universe with its own context, yet still keeps dropping in characters and events we have to rely on the games for to understand. So what the hell is the point? I'm still saying I preferred IDW Comics to make its own brand new series on its own feet, rather than being held hostage by the unstable games. Or at the very least do a Sonic X thing where you do set up your own world, but keep it close enough to the games that you can do your own unique adaptations of the games themselves if Sega demands you to do them. But alas, we're in the middle of an adaptation right out of the gates, but worse, it seems they're not even allowed to do a straight-up adaptation, but instead only making satellite stories around the games. Great, so not only will Ian Flynn constantly have to bend over his own story structure and world building to whatever insane direction the new games are going, but the story will be constantly interrupted by prologue and epilogue stories around events that won't be even covered in the comic. And to make it even more fun, I swear I read somewhere the comics aren't even based on the actual games, but phantom versions of the games, so not only will they comment on events we never get to witness on screen in the comic itself, but on events we technically never get to witness at all, only an alternative universe version of them. Have I mentioned this is supposed to be a clean slate yet?
To be fair, I bet the phantom version of the game's events is just an excuse. I wouldn't be surprised if Ian Flynn just uses that as a shield against Sega's meddling. I bet the Sega staff would constantly object to every interesting story development if it doesn't belong in their vision of the series, whatever that may be. Now Ian Flynn has an excuse that this is a different version of the games, so has more elbow room to do things.
They're still stuck with Sega stipulations. Man, can we talk about these? These are fascinating.
Did you know male characters are forbidden to wear pants? Except for Dr. Eggman, presumably.
This is why there's no lag options for the Avatar and Forces. Only the ladies are allowed to wear pants.
I bet Wave, Blaze and Amy are the ones wearing the pants in their relationship. Hey? Know what I mean?
Huh. And here I was, thinking Sonic Forces didn't have any quality control, seeing how the continuity was broken, things like Sonic being tortured got through and all that. But not to worry, kids! Sega's quality control is on the case to make sure nobody wears pants, because that was an issue that had to be addressed somehow. I mean, it's about OC characters, so we need limits. And when you think about infamous, terrible OC characters and recolors, I think about, pants, I guess. Cold Steel wears them! Whew! Disaster averted. So, is this why humans no longer show up? Because imagine Gun Commander showing up. Would he be pantsless? Will he have like a clean-shaven Sonic-style crotch? What about the upcoming live-action movie? Will our human characters be going commando? Will we see Jim Carrey's hairy talking ass in full glory? Or will they have a CGI clean-shaven crotch for him as well? Then again, he is Eggman, and Eggman still wears pants. Funny how rules never seem to apply to Eggman. But the stipulations that get me the most are the meta-driven ones. Like, the planet they're on is not allowed to be called Earth or Mobius anymore. The new official name is Sonic's World. Okay, great. Good name, soulless manager and a cubicle man. I understand that's a great way to refer to it when you're on stage in the real world talking to your stockholders about your product. In Sonic's World, Sonic and his friends go on adventure in this new product we're selling right now. It's a good meta name, but as soon as you apply that name in-universe with actual dialogue in the actual story, it sounds fucking stupid. Can you hear astronauts saying, oh, we need to take the rocket back to Sonic's World? Or imagine Sonic's world mentioned on world maps. Sounds stupid, doesn't it? But that's what you get when you have chat from marketing to make story decisions. But my all-time favorite logic bomb is this one. Apparently, the Archie comics weren't allowed to use Mephiles the Dark and Black Doom because they died in their respective games. Yo, idiot, this is a different continuity, right? This is like if after the Joker died in the first Batman movie, the Batman animated series comics and other movies also couldn't use Joker anymore all of a sudden. Wait, so does that mean Sega of Japan considers the Archie comics to be in continuity with the games? Because now they actually have to uphold everything that happens in the games directly in the comics as well, even if it didn't happen there yet? So are the Archie comics actually canon now? How the fuck does this work? Again, this is yet another majestic example of Sega being unable to make decisions, unable to make clear distinctions. The entire freaking franchise is just one big giant shapeless sludge of Schrödinger's cat Frankenstein limbo. Everything and nothing is canon, rules change, stories get retconned, everything melts into each other. Anyway, I know I'm probably way too early to complain about this in a discussion about IDW comics. So far, IDW comics is relatively clean, don't get me wrong. So far it's doing okay. But I'm really concerned about how long Iron Flynn will be capable of having any kind of control over it. The Archie comic series at least had the advantage of having had a decade or so of freedom to establish its own identity and world, so it could survive through Sega's unholy merge Limbo for a while. But IDW Comics never had a chance to be its own thing, and is Sega's little cosmic plaything right out of the gate. Which, again, is why I'm baffled why they didn't just use the Simpsons comic or My Little Pony comic thing and just make the issues standalone silly adventures in canon with the source material, instead of even bothering to be its own thing and try to create an epic timeline for themselves. It's just going to get hopelessly entangled in the shapeless limbo of indecisiveness that's choking the Sonic series to death lately.
To be fair, Ian Flynn did mention Sega will have a more case-by-case approach with their quality control over this comic this time, so it should be less stupid this time. So we don't get things like Tails can't touch Sonic in Joy after he thought he was dead in Forces, but they can mention Sonic is tortured because it's never mentioned in the document that was off limits. Still, reading Sega's censorship stipulations is fascinating.
At least it'll be written by a writer who actually knows and cares about the franchise. Unlike those two numbnuts that were picked up from the streets to write a Sonic game, even though they don't even give a damn about the franchise. It's fun to see retellings of stories, whether they be close to the original with some improvements, or if it turns out to be very drastically different, like Fleetway Sonic's version of Sonic Adventure. Man, that was a...
I have to say, love the artwork. The colours, expressions, poses...
It's looking fantastic, yeah. I love the little mountain towns of the setting. It's great. A very good art style between the several artists we had so far. Very detailed. Fan character cameos. Nice mix between cool and cute. I like it. I am kind of puzzled, amused, annoyed at the first 4 covers, though. Member Green Hill Zone? Well, Emerald Hill Zone, I guess.
It's what people expect, I suppose. It's Sonic, and nothing says Sonic than classic Sonic imagery.
Typical modern Sonic. Selling itself on classic imagery, but then banning everything classic Sonic from the comic itself.
To be fair, Sonic Forces itself couldn't decide what it was. You could argue the Happy Emerald Hill covers are a reference to how out of place the Care Bears edition of Green Hill Zone was in Forces.
True, but again, this is not a discredit to the artist Tyson Hesse himself. He is a fantastic artist. And I in a vacuum, I really love the covers. Nice expressions and energy and great color use. In a vacuum, it's great, but I really associate him with cutesy classic Sonic, so it feels out of place with modern Sonic.
If you think Tyson Hesse's artwork looks out of place, try reading through some Sonic comics that involve John Gray's early artwork. Yeah, back in the day when Sonic characters were drawn in this weird anime art style, with over-the-top facial expressions that makes it hard for me to take this story seriously. Granted, his artwork has improved over time, but still.
I kinda like the art. Also, again, I didn't say Hesse's art is awkward on in itself, just the context in which it's used is a sour point for me. In a vacuum, it's great. Where the effects on John Gray's art, whatever that may be, is on its own. Oh well, American comics and their weird, lying covers all the time, I guess.
Now, people just love Tyson Hesse. Written by Ian Flynn. And you can tell because the characters are surprisingly in character again. Sure, Knuckles in Forces was a step in the right direction as far as him not just being a worthless idiot in the background, but they still made him extremely out of character. Now we finally get glimpses of the loner, duty-driven rival of Sonic back, struggling and playing with his position as leader, rather than suddenly being a generic leader out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's a real joy to see the cast act in character again. My god, how long has it been? Sonic Chronicles? Well, post-reboot Archie and Mania, but those are more their own spin-offs. I'm a little conflicted how it's dealt. Like, now, each of the issues spends a considerable amount of time reintroducing the characters, which is nice for newcomers, but also very nice for veterans like me, because after so many soft reboots and spin-offs and rotating writers have no idea what they're doing, I completely lost my grip on who the characters even are at this point, so watching Flynn put them back on the rails again, one by one, is a bit cathartic. But as fun as it is to see Roots play three-dimensional chess with the cast again instead of just being a flat exposition fairy, the comic does seem to suffer from a bit of a pacing problem. I'm already more accustomed to European comics having a complete story from start to finish in their books. It's already tough to getting used to me reading 10 entire comic books and feeling we still haven't really started yet. But I swear there's a ton more story progress in a typical Archie Sonic book than here, where Sonic and Shadow having one debate is an entire comic book instead of just a couple pages. You could say it's for world building, even though there isn't all that much going on here either, instead of mostly relying on just reminding you of the games. So I don't know, but I suppose it's the price we pay for at least getting more accurate version of the cast again.
It's interesting to have a story take place in the aftermath of a previous adventure. There's a lot of games with a weird ending, like Sonic Adventure with Sonic just hopping off after defeating the bad guys. Never mind the city is still in ruins, and there's probably a lot of people still stuck in the rubble that could use his help. Sonic, defender of the weak and needy, but only when it involves cool battles. Actually, getting his hands dirty and providing direct help is for losers. And then there's Sonic Unleashed, already letting Eggman have his Eggman Land without any fanfare, but then it doesn't even bother telling us what happened to it. We don't see it slowly explode and sink into the ground, like we always see with Dracula's Castle in Castlevania games, or Ganon's Tower in Ocarina of Time. The game doesn't care and seems to completely forget about the fact Eggman still has its own continent-shaped base.
Dark Gaia was Eggman Land's main power source. Once Dark Gaia was sealed within the planet again, the entire base was shut down.
What I'm trying to say is, Sonic games do tend to leave out a lot of details unclear. That with Sonic immediately losing interest in any heroic deeds as soon as the main monster is dead. So it's fun to have a story for once where it ends up biting him in the arse that he left before making sure the mess is cleaned up. I love this concept.
Yeah, even though it's a terrible starting point for a new series, but I suppose the concept itself is interesting enough to explore. So yeah, story. As much as I praise Flynn for his character writing, I'm not entirely immured with his general plot writing. Of course, it doesn't help he spends most of the time being, well, the janitor. Even during his Archie days, he spent most of his time constantly cleaning up the mess from the rivalry between the writers and like, constantly having to delete subplots and characters for most of his writing, awkwardly enough for him. But even besides that, I remember the Sonic Unleashed arc and Archie being a bit formulaic, and man, the IDW comics start weak with its first 4 issues being comically formulaic as well. I mean, come on, this is your grace period, your first impression, your glorious entrance on the stage. You gave yourself a rapid-fire release month with 4 comics in 1 month. These 4 issues should have the impact of a bomb! And instead, all I remembered from them is the action scenes. There's a robot, and then Sonic hits the robot, and it explodes. And then there's another robot, and Sonic hits the robot, and it explodes. Oh no, another robot, and Sonic hits the robot explodes. Oh no, another robot, Sonic hits the robot, and the robot goes boom. Oh no, another robot, Sonic hits the robot, boom. Oh no, another robot, and robot explodes, boom. And another robot. I will now go to the next town, because there's more robots that I need to hit, and then they will explode. Sonic merely thinks he needs to go to the next town because there's more robots he needs to hit and then explode. But in reality, there's even more robots in the next town he also needs to hit and explode. And then they go to the next town, and there's another robot, and then he hits the robot. And
it's
the
first issues. They need to set up the story.
Then why waste so much time killing robots? Get the story going. Don't spend 90% of your issue demonstrating to me that Sonic can kill Sonic Forces robots. I mean, that's those assholes here. Big whoop. Get the story going already. I do have to say issue 3 was a breath of fresh air with more of a hostage situation going, finally. And yeah, from issue 5 on, we're finally getting somewhere, but man, the IDW comics give me a bad first impression, at least in terms of story.
Well, it's the first issues. Give them time to create momentum.
So later issues do get better, but still, like what I brought up earlier this video, that I'm more of a story flow guy, while USA comic people just seem to love facts for the sake of facts. So you have the big mystery. There's a random evil man who sends in robots to attack towns, and Sonic's off to punch him in the face. Amy asks Sonic to join her and her friends, so Sonic can punch Evil Man in the face on her behalf. But he declines and refuses to work with Amy and her friends, and will continue to punch the Evil Man in the face on his own accord, although with the help of Amy and her friends. We don't know who the Evil Man is. But then, dun dun dun, it's Eggman, except then, dun dun dun, it's Metal Sonic, except then, dun dun dun, in issue 14, Scooby-Doo will pull off its mask and it was actually coconuts. And I don't care, none of these twists matter because nothing changes. It's still evil bad guy, it's still sending robots to attack towns, Sonic is still going to punch it in the face. None of these plot developments change what anyone is doing or why or how. See, I'm one of those weird guys who like plot twists and plot developments when, you know, something actually twists and actually develops. But nothing matters here. Everything remains in the same position as it was in the first comic. They're just shuffling details around. This is exactly the kind of non-twist I mocked with my "I'm not Eggman, I'm Eggman Nega! I'm not Sonic, I'm Sonic wearing a silly hat" joke. It's like they're expecting me to get an emotional reaction just about facts. To me, it really doesn't matter who evil Batman is, because no matter who it is, nothing changes. It's Eggman, okay, punch him. It's Eggman Nega, okay, punch him. It's Metal Sonic, okay, punch it. It's Captain Whiskers, okay, punch it. Join Amy, okay, punch robots with friends. Don't join Amy, okay, punch robots with friends. The story flow isn't affected, so I don't care.
Comics need time to set their stories up. It's just the first few issues.
Hey, I like Neo Metal Sonic. He's one of my favorite designs. Anyway, in my defense, it makes sense to me because 1, Neo Metal Sonic has that ability to change his appearance, and 2, it was a big surprise to me in seeing him come back after all these years. And if I recall, you stressed this in one of your Q&A videos that if they needed to bring back a Sonic character that hadn't shown up in a long time, they need to actually use said character, and not just a cheap nod to the audience. So here we see Neo Metal Sonic acts as a second-in-command of the Eggman Empire, where until he finds his master, he will continue his legacy in both control and appearance. It does show how Robotnik has learned from his mistakes in Sonic Heroes, and at least there is a purpose on why Neo puts on the Robotnik attire, unlike in, say, Sonic Free Riders, where Metal Sonic disguised himself as a random robot just for the hell of it. And hey, it's a little better structured than what they did with him in the games. I mean, I like the idea of Metal betraying Robotnik and all that, but considering the fact that they never explained why Metal is doing this in Sonic Heroes, it just comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, that's true. They do make good use of the characters, and he does look cool. Not arguing that Metal Sonic by itself is bad, it's just a twist on its own that's kind of pointless, just like it was in Heroes. Although I suppose you could argue the story has a bit of a twist in it now that Mr. Tinker's going to get involved. But still, I'm a bit cautious. I mean, I read Ian Flynn's Mega Man comic as well, and, well, again, the world and details and character representation was great, and the art is also great, but the plot itself is like a conveyor belt experience. It's just, here's a robot from the game, then Mega Man shoots it. Here's this robot from the game, then Mega Man shoots it. Here's this robot master, then Mega Man shoots it. Like, the whole script is just a grocery list of Mega Man opponents to shoot through one by one.
Well, that's how it goes in the video game.
I got this other Mega Man adaptation, a manga called Mega Man Megamix. They take it a little looser with the adaptation, like setting it in one location, giving Wily a more specific plot than just unleash video game opponents and sit in a lab, putting more emotional drama in it, like having Roll slowly freeze to death or something. Robot Masters are teaming up and mix and mash together and in more elaborate set pieces, like chasing Mega Man with a helicopter.
But that didn't happen in the games.
No, but it does make it more interesting to read as a story rather than just, here's robot from game, pew, here's robot from game, pew, here's robot from game, pew.
Well, we all grew up with junk like Captain N the Game Master, where Mega Man and Simon Belmont are stupid clowns barely resembling their game characters. Is that what you want? At least these comics are very loyal to the source material.
Yeah, that's the other extreme. I gotta find a middle ground. But still, Again, this fact mindset and this story flow mindset. It's like in order to enjoy American comics, I need to love just the reconfirmation of facts, even if they just roll by one on a conveyor belt. The Sonic comic is not quite like that yet, but I am just worried it's going to be here's trivia from game. Now cut to the Sonic cast mindlessly boinking into each other.
Oh, that's what she said.
And I wouldn't mind if the action was more varied or creative, but give me a chase, a hostage situation, a heist, something other than endlessly, oh no, a robot, hit the robot and it explodes.
That's unfair. There's creativity in how Sonic and friends take down some of the robots. Amy's team-up move was awesome.
One part I did like was Sonic deflecting Shadow from attacking Mr. Tinker. That was great, but other than that...
Well, in my opinion, I feel like these action segments really help with its identity on how the series is. That's how I've always seen the Sonic universe, full of action and adventure. Certain medias like Lost World and the Sonic Boom TV show heavily relied on dad jokes and meta humor with their identity, and that kind of stuff just puts me to sleep when how they use it too much. Not to mention Sega's false advertising didn't help either. Sonic Forces tries to have more action and adventure, but the story is a mess, and most of the action scenes are just part of the background, or going through some short and forgettable QuickTime events. Now, there is an obvious difference between comics and games, and that comics are more of a visual entertainment, unlike games that are visual and physical entertainment. Comic books have more freedom for the readers to use their imagination to read through the pages, and think of what voices and sound effects they would like playing in their head. Want to imagine Ryan Drummond's voice as Sonic while some Adventure 2 music is going on during the fight? There you go. Want to hear the classic Eggman theme when Robotnik shows up? There you go. And so on and so on.
Hey, I'm not against action scenes, but I'm for variation. Anyway, I guess we need to bring up the new characters. Rough and Tumble and Tangle. I don't have much to say about them. Rough and Tumble, I'm all for new villains. The game series needs more bad guys. Well, rather it needs to utilize the ones they have, like Team Babylon and Team Hooligan, but I guess they're off limits for stupid non-canon circus magic reasons, so I guess Rough and Tumble will fill the void. Fair enough. They work. Then Tangle de l'Amour. Well, she sure is another character who spots a robot and then hits the robot and then the robot explodes. Hey, remember Sonic's ATM when characters had different characteristics and abilities that changed the dynamic and their strategy? Sonic, you're brave and fast. Go there and do a fast brave thing. Sally's smart and sneaky, so she's over there doing a computer thing. Bunny's strong. You go over there and do a strong thing. Antoine's useless. Go there and fuck everything up. Teaming Sonic up with a specific character will influence the dynamic of the mission. Team up with Bunny and Dulcie and it's straight out action. Team up with Sally and it's more sneaky sabotage. Team up with Antoine and there's more bickering and getting captured. As a result, characters will have to formulate strategies so they can do a clever thing in order to outsmart their threatening and dangerous opponents. Man, what a boring shitty show. Thank goodness we have modern Sonic now where everyone is Jesus Techno or Superman plowing through endless enemies without any effort at all. Every single character is person that hits robots and then they explode, except that each character uses a different body part to hit the robots with. So yeah, Tangle is cool with her hitting robots with her tail, but man, I really can't wait for Bob the Goldfish to hit robots with his kneecaps. His cat's kneecaps, that is. I wasn't even planning on making an Earthbound Jim reference, but that was a happy accident. Anyway, point is, I don't hate or love Tangle. She's fine. She's just another Jesus Chuck Norris super character on the pile. She hasn't done anything to make her stand out.
It's the third fucking issues! Shut up! It'll get better in the future!
Although I suppose you can have like little fun visual gags with her. Like that moment was cute. But yeah, that's really all the difference the characters from each other. Little visual gags, I guess.
It'll be more interesting in future issues.
Yeah, be patient, boy. I have a right mind to tell you something about patience. If this video wasn't long enough already.
Right. So, final review. I give Sonic IDW first issue out of first issue, and recommend you to blindly buy the next 50,000 issues brainlessly, and only look back and consider if you wasted your time and money then. Thank you for watching.
Well, I enjoyed those comics, and really genuinely recommend them. And I'm looking forward to Sonic Mania Plus, and the Sonic Racing game. It's a good time to be a Sonic fan again.
As for me, I'll just stick with the comics. I'm giving up on the games after Forces. Well, that was fun. I'd better be heading out now. Those projects I've been stalling for so long aren't going to finish themselves. By the way, look me up if you ever feel like talking more about Archie Sar.